Hey guys, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel, A Card Day's Work. Today I'm going to be sharing a gorgeous ink blended background with you guys using some inks from Simon Hurley Create. Now these are a dye based ink, but they are really good for ink blending. They blend together really nicely, and as an added bonus, these are actually also reactive with water. So these function very similarly to a Distress ink or a Distress Oxide, more so like the Distress ink, just because the Distress Oxide kind of has that oxidized chalky sort of look to it, and these are more closely aligned with a Distress ink, but they definitely do have their own properties and they are not the same ink. But if you have some Distress inks, you can really easily complement your selection with some of the Simon Hurley dye inks, and vice versa. If you have the Simon Hurley dye inks, you can complement your collection with other colors from the Distress ink line. Now this blend that I'm doing today is Minty Fresh, Clear Skies, Remember Me, and then Midnight Snack. And then I also did add in some black soot in the Distress Oxide. Now I use Distress Oxide for that instead of the Distress ink because in the black specifically, I personally have had better luck getting a darker, more solid black with the Distress Oxide versus the Distress ink. The Distress ink I feel like almost looks translucent sometimes when you blend on the black, and I haven't always had the best time getting a really deep black with the Distress ink. So I reached for the Distress Oxide here, and you can see that as I layer on that color, it gets nice and dark, and I just think it adds the perfect touch for these Simon Hurley Create colors that I chose here. Now you could repeat this same technique with your ink blending with a different color family. If you wanted greens or purples would be really pretty with this as well. And Simon's got a lot of colors that you can choose from if you're wanting to check those out. I'll have all the supplies linked down below in case you guys want to take a look at anything. And if you have questions, feel free to drop a comment and let me know. Now I took the Distress sprayer here, spritzed some water directly into my hand, and then flicked my fingers at the panel that I created. Now, as I mentioned, this is a water reactive ink set, so when they are in contact with water, they react, and as you can see, it displaces the ink and kind of gives you a lighter effect there. This works the same with the Distress inks and the Distress Oxides. They all react well with water. Once that dried back a little bit, I did go ahead and take my Dina Wakley Gloss White Acrylic Spray. I like to just take the lid off and tap the handle, and then that gives me a nice splatter without having to mix any paint and water or anything like that like I used to do, and I just get a really nice splatter effect that way. Moving on to the rest of the card here, once my panel dried, and you are going to want to give it a little bit of time to dry, or else your ink splatters will smear. Ask me how I know. We went back in with the Distress Oxide in black soot here and blended on a little bit of black ink at the bottom to create like a grounded sort of area for our background using this really cool stencil from Simon's line. Again, I'll have everything linked below if you want to check that out, but I really love the effect that this gives, and I used the same color but just applied less ink as I moved up with the stencil a little bit, and that gave the effect that there was more grass, and it sort of gave it a dimensional feel rather than just being one flat silhouette with nothing else. I know black is not normally a color you would use for grass, but with this nighttime scene, I thought it worked perfectly. Now I'm moving on to stamping out a sentiment and creating that thing that ties the card together, right? I decided to use one of the sentiments from one of Simon's newer sets, and this is called, it's Dudettes, but the sentiment itself says, "You are so much stronger than you think." And I thought with this beautiful background, it just was a very inspirational and sort of emotionally charged sentiment to add to this card, and it really spoke to me. I decided to do some heat embossing because it's been a little while since I've done that. I had been sticking to more simple cards recently, so I decided to go back and touch into some of my favorites, which are white heat embossing on dark cardstock. I wasn't sure if I wanted the dark blue or the black here, so I did both just to have a choice. And then I used a new product to me, which is a stamp conditioner from Maker Forte, and that just makes the stamp ready to use, and you get like a perfect stamp the first time. Seems to be working well. I'm going to keep using it, and I'll let you guys know how I feel about it, and if it's something that I want to like recommend and have you guys try out as well. Once I did my heat embossing, I used some clear ink from Maker Forte to get the embossing powder to stick to that. I did treat my surface with an anti-static powder tool. That just helps the embossing powder not stick to the background. And then I went ahead and poured that white embossing powder from Ranger on top of my sticky ink. Knocked off the excess and then melted that embossing powder with my heat tool. I put a little bit of foam tape on the back, as you can see here, and then worked a little bit to get it less crooked. I think it was a little crooked to begin with. I don't think my trimming was top notch, but I fixed it. I think it worked out in the end. I did decide to go ahead and trim down my panel so that there would be a nice crisp white border around the outside. So I cut this down to 4 by 5 1/4 and then mounted it directly on a white A2 size card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. This is kind of a standard size in the card making industry, and it's my most preferred card size. I think it's nice. It's a good size without being too large, and I really, really like that. Once everything was attached, my card was complete. I hope you guys love this card as much as I do. It's been a while since I have felt really inspired by crafting, and this card really hit home for me, so I hope you guys love it. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, and I'll see you guys in another one really soon.